Welcome to the Gifted Neurodivergent Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the exploration and cultivation of the outside genius found in neurodivergence.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Gifted Neurodivergent Podcast. My name is Lillian Skinner. Today I want to talk about sensing, how our sensing is driven, how it manifests, how it benefits us, how it's been denied, and how it really is driven by us learning at the cellular level. I'm going to do another podcast specifically on that learning at the cellular level and go into it in greater detail because I have a guest that's going to join me and she's going to talk about it. She was the speaker at the Profoundly Gifted group and she did this really great talk, and I want to drain her brain of all the wealth of knowledge she has, and I'm going to do a podcast around that. So I will go into more detail on that later, but right now I'm going to talk about the sensing and how we have really been denied our sensing as a gift. Have we been denied the results of it? I went to the Profoundly Gifted retreat and I thought I would do some podcasting while I was there, but holy cow, I'm exhausted and it took me a whole week to sort of recover, and I'm still not there because I am highly sensitive. We were talking about EDS, mast cell, MS, ADHD, and autism, and how our higher sensitivity is actually really valuable because it helps us learn. It helps us learn in ways that our society has denied us, and it's really important we turn that around. The world's changing, and we do really need our higher sensing intelligence as change increases. I feel as if the system is trying to pretend that it doesn't exist and trying to pretend that we are less than and label us, when in reality, we're kind of the future. It's really true. We are, and our high sensing and our ability to see many perspectives and many dimensions is really, really important as we move into the next era, the era of greater change, an era of less stability, an era of chaos to some degree. And we're looking at our system where we're having breakdowns of our society. We're rolling back rights we thought were givens for healthcare and fertility and having children and not having children. We're looking at a segregation, races again, even though race really isn't real. It's created by humankinds and liars who did medical research and claimed that there was differences between races when there isn't. We had the same thing with neurodivergence. So they made all these lies about our abilities and made us appear less than. And in my family, that was incredibly damaging. We were institutionalized forcefully. We were told we were liars. And I have experienced this where I've gone to the doctor and been told I don't have autism or I am not gifted. I'm just a narcissist because I learn differently. I learn sensing wise. I learn easily, but I also have EDS and ADHD and autism and savantism. Because I learn at a sensing level, I get exhausted halfway through the day. When I was sitting in this conference and listening to the speakers, they were talking about the modalities and the issues that those of us with profound giftedness have and how we have weaknesses and strengths. I was confused. They were describing things that I have on the second part of the day and not things I have in the beginning part of the day. They were talking about visual issues. There's this focus on our deficiencies, but in reality, I don't actually have deficiencies. What I have is fatigue. Depending on when you test me, if you tested me in the morning versus the evening and how long you test me, I'm going to test really, really well, or I'm going to test pretty darn bad. Now, I typically end up testing as bright because the testing takes so long. So in one part, I'll do exceptional, and then it will just get worse as the day goes on. They have these testing that's so many hours without understanding how high sensing actually makes you more exhausted, how open channels that those of us with autism and probably those of us with ADHD and some other areas, we just can't close. And the more gifted that area is, the harder it is to close, the inability you have to close it. My higher sensitivity, my ability to learn so easily and understand the environment around me and the people I'm with, it's a trade-off. That comes at a high cost and also an amazing payoff. I struggle in the system. I struggle to be normal. I struggle to learn normally. I am totally worn out by the second half of the day. And I was talking with a friend, we work together in banking, who also has ADHD and EDS. And she was saying to me, remember when we used to go on those coffee runs? We did. Every 3 hours, we went on these giant coffee runs. We would go get a huge coffee drink, and then we could sit down and work for another hour or so. But it was really hard on my body. My body was constantly high and low, high and low. My blood sugar was all over the place. I was really struggling. I grew up in a family where they had a lot of kids, very short period of time. My parents were both neurodivergent, and that cost me a lot of love, honestly. It cost me an intense amount of respect and joy in my family and my parents, and I was massively marginalized and told I was not a good kid because I was high and low and I was struggling and I wasn't allowed to struggle because my parents were struggling. And so they wanted me to take over because I was the oldest. And I didn't get the opportunity to really find out about myself. I'm doing it now in middle age, and it's astonishing. It's sad and it's scary. And I think of all the other people out there who are like me and how we are finding out way too late. I'm trying to set a bar for my children so that I can make sure that they turn out with much better lives and they're prepared for what's coming and the changes that are coming, and that they are educated in a manner that educates them well and not in a manner that just conditions them. What I found is that I'm not crazy. Our cellular ability to learn aids us in our acquisition of new information, new facts, new knowledge. It gives us motor learning and skills acquisition very easily. It gives us associated learning very easy, that connective learning, has spatial learning and memory, and it gives us emotional learning and memory. And I have all of those as skills. My body is incredibly great when I am physically working out and I am pumping iron. Well, it turns out there's a reason for that. That mast cells at the mitochondrial level, we are building more powerhouses. We are building more. And if I am not working out, I am not maintaining good physical strength, my body is breaking down. It is literally not functioning well. It is not learning. And last year I had to have surgery, my neck replaced by titanium, thanks to neglect and car accidents. And my body was hurting more than I've ever felt in my life. And I thought, did this surgery do me more harm than good? A year later now, I'm starting to get my strength back. It's very hard. I definitely have to work out every day. I'm at this retreat and they're talking about, this is all interconnected. This is part of your giftedness. This is a part of your ability to learn as much as it is a part of your ability to not learn, as much as your part ability to fall apart. And if we are putting people who are incredibly gifted into jobs and spaces and roles in life where they are not getting their sensitivity understood and met, then we are limiting their abilities. And I grew up in poverty, so I didn't get that. I got a lot of, I don't want to hear your complaints. We're all struggling. We wonder why there's no geniuses. Well, let me just tell you why there's no geniuses. Because most of us now, we don't have resources. Where most of us are struggling. The middle class has moved from middle class really to lower class, and the middle class doesn't exist anymore. And so these brilliant children out there, these children are getting traumatized for their high sensitivity, for an extreme ability to learn, and they're being labeled as ADHD and autism as if they were lesser when they're actually more. Those high-functioning ADHD and autistic kids are probably amazingly gifted children that we make believe they're less than. And that's what happened to me, and that's what happened to my sister, who the two of us are savants, and we were not allowed to cultivate. We were broken down and destroyed. And I haven't seen that change at all. I've had to pull my kids out of school. I've had to rearrange my life. I had to figure out ways to make money and also keep them home. And I had to change my whole way of living so that I could accommodate this. I'm happier every day for it because now I get to learn the way I properly learn. I get to learn the way I naturally learn. I don't need to be taught things. I can go figure them out myself. I can find them and research them, and we have more information available to us than ever before. And we are creating this whole new way of understanding our sensing and understanding the way we move through the world and validating it. I have a client, she lives in Australia, she's also a dear friend, and she was telling me that the plants talk to her, the trees talk to her, they reach out to her. I was interested in this because what does that mean exactly? I don't really know. My brain does not have that connection, but I do have with animals. I feel animals. I think I talked about swimming with the manatees and realizing that the manatees were peaceful. The manatees were chill. There wasn't a whole lot of emotion I was getting out of other than we're just living. It's good. I found that really sad because I had been around so many animals growing up. All of those animals have a sadness. They have a longing, a needing, a something that I have in myself. I never really thought too much about it. I just sort of thought that's like how we all were until I was around those manatees and realized, oh, no, it's not. This is healthy. That is not. And humans and animals in captivity, thanks to Peter Levine and his Waking the Tiger book on trauma, that book on trauma talks about how animals in captivity and humans are the only animals with PTSD. And honestly, PTSD is probably just not being chill and cool and fun. Everybody probably has PTSD. And that's been my experience as someone who moves through the world feeling others and not feeling myself because my emotions resolve because of my autism. I actually really feel others all the time. And I would say most people are pretty freaking sad. There's moments where we have happiness. There's moments of that. But for the most part, most people are kind of like, what happened? I can feel the misery of the masses and it sucks. I have had to break away because I cannot live in other people's issues because I can't fix them. And my brain is a fixing brain. I map things out. I chart them out. I can see the future scenarios and what the options are, and I walk them. very easy for me to do that, has always been. And I enjoy doing that. It's partly why I'm a futurist. It's partly why I do life coaching for people, because I'm good at seeing the variables and mapping where they will go and then giving you options. What I wanted to understand is why we have all this sensing and how all this sensing has been sort of denied us, how we have focused on average, and in doing so, we have marginalized the most sensitive and many of the brightest. When you are highly sensitive, you can have manifestations where this goes good and it goes bad. And we can see both of those. But those of us who are moving through the world functioning well, we have highs and lows of our abilities, and we're forced into caring about executive management function when we're creatives, and that really doesn't serve our creative minds, our creative abilities, our creative ways of being. You cannot create things and know how long it's going to take you because it's brand new. I have talked about this in the past. I'm not going to go too far into it, but I do think that we have to break free. Now, the good news is capitalism is pretty much dying. All of this schedule and this control, there has a potential for change. And my biggest goal really on this podcast is to try to get us to see and form a collective, and I talk about this on LinkedIn. We need to recognize our ability. We need to start cultivating each other and training each other and going into our sensing, because when my friend told me that the trees and plants talk to them, I realized it connected to my Savant podcast where I said something's different. She was recognizing that there was something different about that plant, but she saw it as a connection, whereas my brain was like, oh, something is different. It is indeed different. So I said to her, okay, well, what is different about it? And she said, well, my plants need to be watered. And I was like, well, what about the tree? And she's like, well, I don't know, something was different. So she told me later that they had cut the tree, that they had pared it back for the power lines. And that's why she thinks she noticed it. That's what was reaching out to her. And for me, my brain goes, something is different. I ask myself, what is different? And it delivers it. She will go through that process of looking at it, figuring it out, or feeling incentive to do something, or intuitively doing something. Whereas I ask my brain for a definitive answer, because my brain and I have been going back and forth in this training since I was an infant. So my training in this is a little bit further along, but is a gift that we all have. And if you watch history shows, you'll notice people who are special forces, or people who are Native American or Native people, wherever they are, you'll notice that they have a lot more sensing, a lot more touch with their bodies and their, what's the signals or such coming in from them around them. All of us have this, but those of us with high sensitivity, high giftedness, high neurodivergence, we especially have this. We are given gifts, savant gifts or savant skills or splinter skills or whatever you want to call them. We all sort of have unique abilities, and the way our sensing manifests, the highs and lows of our sensing, it provides for us each a unique gift that we're ready to be made for. And our society has just let that go. They have forgotten that. They have pretended it doesn't exist. And so I've been reading Eastern medicine, Eastern philosophy, trying to find it back, trying to get it back to where they had it. In Eastern philosophy, they spend a lot of time staring at people, because in your hands and your feet and your everything, in your body, there are signs for what your gifts are. There are signs for what your abilities are. There are signs for what your weaknesses are. Doctors sort of have let this go. Now they have checklists, and it's also that everybody can do it. And we have a society that focuses on young people and getting them out there. But young people don't have intuition because they're just learning all of this information. They haven't actually practiced it. When you're practicing, which is what medical fields do, which is what a lot of fields that are really, it's a practice that you are running. When you're practicing, you're learning because everything is new. Everything is interesting. And one of the things about our system is that we have made some people able to practice forever and grow, and it's interesting and exciting. But really, those people are just the billionaires. They're just the wealthiest 1%. The rest of us, we are stuck in positions that are monotonous, repetitive, dictated by them, and out to make the most money for them at literally the breaking down of our best selves, the crushing of the most intelligent, the crushing of our bodies, the destruction of our brains. This is not a good deal. This is a horrible deal. Like, why live in this sort of society? And that's why it's breaking down. Capitalism is going to break down because the younger people don't see a retirement from this. They don't see a payoff from this. It's a bad deal. Additionally, the wealthy are entitled. They have gone a generation and they haven't earned their money. They've forgotten what really hard work and struggling is. And we have that separation of classes where the upper class only serves their own needs as they increase the cycle of the destruction going downward. So we totally have to do something about that, because the effects are we all suffer at every level of our society. have silos all over the place, even in medicine with industries that used to be practiced. So now we have people kind of breaking off and moving into life coaching, or breaking off and moving into these other areas that allow them to consult and build their knowledge base as they choose and want to. The future is this, though. The future is the breaking away, because the system's breaking down. The system has too many silos. And when any large organization, any large society, the way it functions is too siloed, start breaking down. When we break down, people will roll off. And the first to roll off are the neurodivergents, are the gifted neurodivergents, are the most sensitive, because they are the ones that have no choice. They can't stay in that repetitive nature. Their bodies break, their brains break. It drives you mad, that repetitive over and over and over. One of the reasons I went into IT was that it was new and growing. And when it got stagnant, I had to roll out. And when I rolled into emerging tech, that was fun. But even that is like getting too marginalized, and I had to roll out. And so now I'm in here doing my own research for gifted neurodivergence, because it is fun and exciting, and I can learn and I can grow. And it is literally a practice for me. It's a practice for my brain, where I'm practicing and learning and growing and working with people. And each person is a new, unique way of seeing the world. We have lost that practice. We have now everybody marginalized, and it's all about money, money, money. And that is going to break the system. So roll out now, because if you roll out now, you get ahead of everyone. If you're rolling out now, you're building the new system, a better system, a sustainable system, a system that recognizes that capitalism hit its maximum, didn't serve huge groups of people, and now a new one is to be built that will. Let's correct the errors we made in the past. Let's make people more holistic. We talk about which is the practice of just sort of going through the world, not working against it, but almost being with it. And when I talked about those manatees and being in the water with them and not feeling them and just having that peace, I was like, ooh, they're already on that. That is actually our natural state. We have to be in that state of being, it's no resistance. You figure it out as you go with the flow. We're capable of this. We have been told we're not capable of this. We have been told that we do not know how to learn. We have to be taught it, and it has to be focused, and we have to do it all this certain way. But that's absolutely not true. There is so much variation in humanity, and each one of us has these abilities that we're supposed to go into, and we've been denied it. There is huge amounts of psychology that have just been dropped. There's huge amounts of understanding of humanity that we just said, no, we're not going to focus on that because it doesn't relate to producing. But now we need it back. And part of that is the sensing. I keep seeing all of these horrible disaster events, extreme heat, people getting hit with those hail balls, people going into flooding. And I think, if you were to touch your sensing, you would not have driven into the flash flood. You don't do that. I have been in flash floods. I have gotten out of my car and left it, ran up a hill because I needed to get through this, and the water was coming fast. I have been through hurricanes. I've lost a house in a hurricane. Nature is scary. It is not a cool thing. It is not fun. We have been really babied in how they treat us, but now that's over. We have orcas sinking boats, and we have otters stealing surfboards, and then we have nature coming after us. We are going to have to change our way of being, our way of seeing, our way of doing, our way of thinking, because we are now facing a new world. I was watching a video with my daughter, and they were walking through downtown San Francisco, and it was a ghost town. And that's going to increase. There's all this fascination with the old, because the old is what we'll be soon. The whole system as we know it is going to fall down. You're not going to be able to go into work because it's too broken. Nothing left there to salvage. San Francisco is a dying town. California is a dying state. We have countries that are dying. We have places in the world where there's some growth, but most of it is going to be waning. It's not going to be growing. And how do you live in a waning world? Well, you become adaptive, you become sensing oriented, and you become less focused on amassing great fortunes and more focused on connecting with the people that are around you and developing healthy, whole communities. We're going to move back to the suburbs. We're going to move back to the rural areas. We're going to have sustainable communities that we can all build and live together, take care of each other's children, meet their needs, and develop them in their unique gifts, because AI will do so much. AI will come in and help us all be better. It might help me make a book faster. I don't have to hire somebody to do all the editing that I would normally have hired. It will help me do some things by myself. But truthfully, I need other people to live, because my sensitivity is only so much value to me. It's much more value to those who are less sensitive and can trade off with me. Our world has gotten lost. We lost our core center of of kindness and good and sharing. We forgot that teachers were important and that children needed to be cultivated individually. We've forgotten that healthcare people needed to connect to the people they were working with. We have just destroyed the empathy levels of those who work in the system because we require so much of them. They are not allowed to be their best. They're not allowed to connect with their patients or their clients. That is lost, and that is horrible. I don't even understand why I'd want to go to the doctor if the doctor only has 5 minutes for me. I don't know why I'd want to go and talk to a nurse if the nurse is going to roughly take my blood pressure and draw my blood and then move on to somebody else because they have to do this as quickly as possible. And they're not measured on how they treat me. They're measured on how many they draw. This is a problem. We have broken it. We have too big of a system in place that is pushing us towards this horrible cliff. And the only way we're going to survive is if we roll out. We can't go over the cliff with the system. It's the who moved the cheese thing. I think I've talked about it before. The cheese pile is diminishing and we have to go off and make or find a new cheese pile. I think it's very important that we realize that the who moved the cheese thing was pretty profound way back in 2000 when it came out. But it was telling us then, the system is dying. You got 40 years left in it. And now we're 25 years into that 40. It's time to realize that you can watch it die or you can start building anew. And I, for one, want to build anew. So that's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to create a new way of seeing and being and doing and getting people to rally together, become a collective, serve themselves, find a way that we work in the world so that we can get our needs met, meet each other's needs, and have healthy, harmony, holistic living. I am constantly putting out there on LinkedIn, stop separating yourself. You will never achieve your best life, your best self, if you separate along the neurodivergent labels. I don't care if you're just HSP, you will find as you get older that you're more than HSP. Because if you're sensitive, then you probably have Ehlers-Danlos, or you probably have mast cell, or you have this to some slight degree. It's how much you have it that you will find as you get older. But typically, if you are sensitive, you're going to have some of this, and it's going to manifest differently in each person. I just happen to have a whole lot of it, and I think that comes from the savantism. And yes, it is a huge payoff that I have the savant skill and I can understand things in the world that I never was taught to know. I just know. But it's also this huge drawback. We figure out together how their brain works because my brain mirrors other people's brains and I have a high access to it. And it is awesome. It's awesome to sit across from somebody who says, this is happening to me. And then I feel that when I'm with them, and I know that it manifests in a different form for me, but it's still the same outcome. And then I can explain that to them and they come back to me and are like, oh my gosh, thank you. You've made me feel so much more sane. It makes me feel just as sane back. It's a beautiful thing that when we connect, we can give each other. Now we have all these beautiful children out there, amazing, sensitive children that we're not manifesting their full potential. And we should be. We do need to get in touch with how they move through the world. We do need to understand how they move through the world. And then we need to cultivate that in them. We need to give them opportunities that's manifesting it. I have said so many times that it is not our kids needing organization or a schedule or the sameness. It's they get overwhelmed. What they need is more time down. And then if you're going to give them a new environment, you got to give them something that is familiar to go with. When I was a little girl, when I went into a new environment, I typically went in with my siblings. I remember very much holding my youngest sister's hand because it gave me a solace. And if I could focus on her, I could sort of shut off the rest of the world. So having smaller siblings, having younger siblings, having siblings where I was forced to go into all these new environments with them, it was actually of value to me. It gave me a center for me to focus on so that I could expand and see this world. They also got something back. They got a stable person. When I take my children out, even though that they have autism, even though they have ADHD, even though they're highly, highly sensitive, if I am with them, they will go into new environments. They will be fine. They will keep tabs on me. And I see this in little kids, like they talk about babies making sure that their mom's in the room and then they're fine. It's the same way for neurodivergent kids their whole lives. As we grow older and we have more patterns in our brains that we can access, we have more knowledge, we have more understanding of the world, we always have a toehold as we get older, unless we go to a different country or unless I go to a profoundly gifted retreat and I'm like, holy cow, so many brilliant people, so much overexcitabilities. I was struggling in those groups. I would start out in a group and my skin would be wriggling, wouldn't barely stand there, and I'd have to leave the group after a little bit because these people were putting off so many inputs for me to take in that I just have to go back and stare at the wall and just like let them go. And I still then took a week after we got back home. It is really hard to be us, but it's also really beautiful. We notice things, we understand things, we move through the world in this really higher, more complex, more detailed, more interesting level. And the major cities, which I'm moving away from one, and I can't just rejoicing in this, they're really hard for us. We burn out there, and we have to have a lot of peace. And I see this with the people who live in major cities who are sensitive and artists. They burn out there. They need lofts with space, and they need to have control over their environment. And if they're creating in that space and they're in that space a lot, going out to restaurants or whatever, that's a nice, beautiful thing. But if they're having to go navigate the city and do little menial jobs or go to college, or that's an instant burnout. I lived in New York City when I modeled, and it was horrible. I couldn't do it. I didn't like it. My son did the same thing. He didn't like it. It was more than we could take. So he moved to LA. He liked it better there. But I didn't move to LA. I just quit. I think that we should really, really sit down with each child and figure out what their sensitivities are, what their potential is, and then build them their own specialized plan. Why do we lose that? Why do we not understand that for gifted kids? I really don't know that we truly understand how profoundly gifted children need their own way of being and their own plan. My middle kid is such an introvert that she stayed in her room. It's not that she's not social. It's not that she doesn't like kids. It's just that it was enough for her to walk through the room and she was pretty much done. We went on hikes. We went out into nature. It was beautiful, but she did not want to do the groups. It was just too much. I do best with 1 to 2 people. I work better with 1 to 2 people. Groups are horrible for me. It's not because I don't understand them, it's because I take in all this extra input that's not actually what we're trying to focus on. And I know that people want me to agree with them. They want me to validate them. And I can't do it because I just see the world differently. I see the world with different dimensions. I see the world with different perspectives. I see the world with a lot more perspectives. And this is one of the discussions we did at the retreat. We talked about, what is perfectionism? Well, for everyone else, perfectionism was wanting it to be good, making sure it was detailed and great and wonderful. For me, perfectionism is not that. Perfectionism is actually disabling for me. It's disabling because I can see so many different perspectives that I will start down a path and I will be like, well, maybe that's the wrong perspective. And then I'll change it. And then I'll change it. And then I'll change it. Then I'll change it. It is much easier for me to do a diatribe, a monologue on this podcast and to go just the way I go in this flow without having anybody than it would be for me to write, because writing gives me the space. And then I overthink it. Then I have too many perspectives that I can see. And I was talking with my friend and she was saying, yeah, I got told I overcommunicate. I hate to break it to you. There's no such thing as overcommunicating. You're communicating at your level, and whoever you're communicating to that deems you as overcommunicating is just not as smart as you. So you're seeing their perspective and yours and trying to write out both. And they're just seeing theirs and are like, make it easy for me. And we live in a world where we have to come down to those who are not as bright, who are not as aware or multi-perspective as us, and we are forced to work at their level, and we're told that we are the ones with something wrong. That is not the case. There is nothing wrong with you. You're exceptional. You should probably be working with other exceptional people and not destroying and using up all of your energy working to meet the needs of those who are not at the same level as you. It is unfortunate that we are in this world, that we struggle so much, that this world is all wrapped around letting us know what is wrong with us instead of letting us know what's right with us, so we can say, hey, this isn't working. I need to take a break, or I need to find a new job. We have so much fear and we spend so much time on shame and making people feel horrible, when in the reality, those are a waste of your time. Shame is a waste of your time. It's an outside feeling. It does not actually deliver any information to you. I learned this so many times in childhood where I was being shamed. The only thing that came up, when my emotions come up, I get boatloads of information. With shame, I get nothing. It's silent. I don't get anything from it. Shame is an outside influence, and it's meant to control you. It's not actually valuable. There is guilt, and that is different, and we'll talk about that another time. But shame is what our system runs on, and it is only meant to disable you. I would like to keep going on this topic, and I'm going to pick it up again next week, and I'm going to talk more about these things because it's really important for us to understand how our high sensing manifests into really painful things that are difficulty eating, difficulty living, difficulty breathing, difficulty everything. Definitely when I'm in environments that are new and I'm upset, my stomach is wrecked. When I was a kid, this was pretty much all the time. And I know my mom used to talk about her stomach always being upset. She got a divorce. She walked around all the time with a Pepto-Bismol bottle. There are so many of us, we just manifest this with our bodies because our bodies are giant antennas. Our bodies are big sensing things that we are walking through the world with, and we need to understand them. We need to know them, and we need to be told the truth about them, and we need to go into them and understand what our individual nature is, what our individual gifts are, what our individual sensing is. And then we lead with that, because when you know how you work, then every new environment you walk into, you know how to approach it. And when you're a little kid, that's especially important. That's all I'm going to talk about this today. I hope this was valuable, and I hope you'll tune back in for the next one I talk about. If you guys want to be on my podcast and you want to talk about your sensitivities, and you want to sit down and kind of go through this with me, I love that. I would totally love that. Especially those of you who are empaths, because I'm going to do another one following up on empathy. Empathy is the root of our intelligence. Empathy is the interest and understanding of everything. It's not just people, it's all learning. It's everything. Empathy is huge. We have to understand that our sensitivity is what will save us. It is what will help us grow and be more brilliant and know what to do next. And that we can actually trust ourselves. You are amazing and you are brilliant, and we just need to figure that out. We just need to figure you out. Once you have that, you're off and running. Thank you for listening. I hope that you are well and you enjoyed this podcast.